Today we are going to look at a case that could happen only in America. Picture it. You're standing on a train platform, waiting for your train. You are minding your own business. Then out of nowhere, a scale falls on you. Not because it was poorly mounted above you, but because of an explosion that happens far away that you didn't know about. You sue the owner of the scale for failing to secure it properly, and what you hear in return is that the explosion that happened elsewhere was so remote in time and space for the scale owner to reasonably foresee, and therefore they don't owe you a duty of care. Let us unpack one of the most famous tort law cases of all time. Palsgraf versus Long Island Railroad Company, decided in 1928. It was a busy day at a Long Island Railroad station in New York. Helen Palsgraf, a mother and unsuspecting passenger, stood far from the commotion near the platform edge. A train was pulling up to the platform. Two men rushed to catch it. One of them struggled to board. A railroad employee on the train reached out to pull the man in. Another employee on the platform gave a push from behind. As the man stumbled onto the train, a package he carried dropped. Unknown to all, that package contained fireworks. When it hit the ground, it exploded. The shockwave from the explosion traveled down the platform, knocking over a large scale. It fell directly on Helen Palsgraf, injuring her. She sued the Long Island Railroad Company for negligence. But did the company owe her a duty of care? Let's analyze this case using the IRAC method. First, what is the issue? Did the Long Island Railroad Company owe a duty of care to Helen Palsgraf, making it liable for negligence when her injuries were caused by a chain reaction of events? To answer that, we need to know the relevant rule. Negligence occurs when someone breaches a duty of care they owe another person, causing them harm. Three elements must be proven to establish negligence: duty, breach, and causation. This case is a duty case, so let's focus on that aspect. We also need to look at the concept of proximate cause, which is a legal cause. In other words, was the harm a foreseeable result of the defendant's conduct? Now let's analyze the facts of the case using the rule. Chief Judge Benjamin Cardozo, writing for the majority, focused on duty. He argued that negligence is based on a duty owed to a foreseeable plaintiff. In this case, the railroad employees may have been negligent toward the man boarding the train, but not toward Helen Palsgraf, who stood far away with no visible connection to the incident. Since she was not within the foreseeable zone of danger, the railroad owed her no specific duty. Therefore, no legal negligence existed. To illustrate this idea, Cardozo used the famous hypothetical of a person shooting a gun at a target in the country. If someone else is in the line of fire, then the shooter may be liable for negligence. But if a third party is so far away that being shot is a remote possibility, no such duty exists. Cardozo concluded that Palsgraf was too far removed from the negligent act to establish liability. He wrote, "The risk of harm to a third person from the defendant's conduct is a question of fact for the jury to determine. But the risk of the third person is not to be measured by the probability of its occurrence. It is enough if it is a reasonable possibility, but not too remote." In other words, Palsgraf's injury was too remote a consequence of the railroad's negligence to establish liability. Judge Andrews, however, took a different view. He believed that once general negligence is established, the chain of causation should determine liability, even if the plaintiff was not foreseeable. In his view, negligence toward one could extend to consequences for others. The better rule, according to Andrews, would be to find the railroad liable, because their negligent act set in motion a series of events that culminated in Palsgraf's injury. Plus, he pointed out, the likelihood of something like this happening might be low, but it's not impossible. Therefore, the railroad should be held liable. Unfortunately for Andrews, Cardozo's narrower view won. So what was the conclusion? The court ruled in favor of the Long Island Railroad Company. Helen Palsgraf lost the case and never received compensation. However, her case had a lasting impact. The Palsgraf case is one of the most famous in tort law. It clarified the concept of duty and established the principle that the scope of liability is limited to what is foreseeable. Her case taught us that not every tragic outcome has a legal remedy, and that duty, as a legal concept, stops where foreseeability ends. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to stay updated on new videos, share, comment, and give us a like. See you in the next video.